and welcome to this week's edition of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Ian Fisher, your host today, and we're recording this episode on Thursday, April 9th, but you'll be listening to the show sometime next year on April 16th. Yeah, that's right. We're living each week 1 year at a time these days. Now, if you've been listening to our podcast regularly, you might not know that we've been recording videos of all of our segments for the last month or so. And what that means is that there's always an awkward moment at the start of the segment where our viewers can see our guest hanging out on screen with no introduction. And to fix that problem, I'm going to say hey to Joy Biscornet, who's on screen with us right now and will be our guest for the first segment. Hey there, Joy.
Hey, Ian.
So, Joy, I'm going to do a little bit more housekeeping, but I didn't want you to have to go unacknowledged for too long. So
Sure.
I hope that's
Thanks.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So we've got a great show for you today. We'll be talking about the concept of fit with our finance experts in our final segment today. Fit is a concept that gets bandied about quite regularly when we're talking about choosing a college, but we don't always apply it to a discussion of finances. So we'll address why you should. And in our second segment, we're going to spend our office hours talking about what you can do when you don't like any of the colleges where you've been accepted. What options are available? We think there are other pathways ahead if you're in that boat. But first, we want to assume that you do like some of the options that are available to you, that you are happy with some of your choices. And that's why Joy is here. Joy, you and I were participants in a webinar last week where we unpacked a lot of questions about making the final decision. So let's start with just the absolute basics. For those students who are fortunate enough to have a long list of acceptances, let's say 5, 6 schools, they've done a great job with their list. They might have a difficult choice ahead of them. How would you recommend that they begin?
Sure. That's a great place to start. And first, I wanted to say congratulations to everyone who's listening and who has those acceptances. Even though we're living in a time of uncertainty, this is something to celebrate. So I want to focus on that because this is exciting. Even though prom may be canceled, graduation may have been postponed, this is still a big decision. So congrats. So in thinking about this final decision, if you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 decisions, now is really the time to start to go back and think about why you liked these schools in the first place, and then really start to dig deeper. If you're trying to compare what your academic program is going to be like, this is a great time to really dive into the course catalogs that are online and to see what your academic program is going to be like. If you're studying, English literature, what is that going to be like from one school to another? Same if you're studying engineering or political science. Yes, the degree or the major might have the same name, but there's going to be variety in the courses that you take. And that's not only in the major, as you and I know, having been through this and knowing a lot about different colleges, but there are different types of programs. Are you going to a school that has a core curriculum or thinking about a school that has a core curriculum where every student has to take certain courses in addition to their major in order to graduate? Or are there some general education requirements? Or is it an open curriculum where you can just focus on what you want? So in thinking about what your coursework is going to be like over the course of 4 years and the day-to-day, you really need to think about what type of person are you? How do you like to study? What really engages you? Is it that broad-based education and being able to take a deep dive into one particular subject? Or do you just want to get in there right away and just start to study what you want?
That's right.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm working with a lot of juniors right now who are starting their research process, and I sort of tell them some of these questions that you have around the college major and requirements to graduate are questions that you can't really look at for 30 schools at a time, 35 schools at a time. But when you're a senior and you're making the final decision, you're only really looking at a handful of schools, maybe 3, 5, 7. You can go look at the course catalog for all of those schools. And we know, Joy, that people have a lot of time on their hands right now. I just spoke with one of my students earlier today, and he said, I got nothing but time and energy. So I'm glad to put it to good use.
Right.
So, you can absolutely start looking around on those catalogs, investigating a little bit of information about what the actual classes kind of look like. What about sort of personal perspective and testimonials from students that you might meet on a tour if you're able to visit campus, from admission officers who might be staffing receptions? Those things aren't happening, at least not in the way that they traditionally have.
Right.
What would you recommend for students on that front?
Right. Reach out to the college admission offices, even though they might be closed to visitors. Those admissions officers are still working. They're most likely working from home, but this is a big time of year for them. This is when they're looking to bring in that freshman class. And they're excited. I remember from my time in admissions, I loved April because I got to meet with students on campus. I was also traveling to different parts of the country to
Yeah.
host admitted student receptions. So they're recruiters. They're looking to bring students to their campuses. So the fact that students can't come to campus, that none of us can really travel right now, doesn't mean that those conversations can't happen. And
Right.
I think what a lot of families don't realize is that they can call the admission office, and those calls are welcome. So reach out to the admission office, or if you have an email from your regional admission officer, reach out to that individual and say, you know what? Can I be put in touch with a student from that's interested in sociology, because that's what I want to study? Or maybe, and if you're going from far away or thinking about going from far away, see if you could talk to a student from your home state that is
Yeah,
goes to that school. They're
it's a great
happy to
idea.
be put in touch. Also, see if you can speak with faculty. If you've got definite plans for what you want from your academic experience, if you're looking to do research and you want to know how early can I start to do that research, see if you can speak to faculty members. They want vibrant, engaged students in their classes. So if you can speak to them, then they'll know they can talk to you.
Right.
Part of the reason why I chose my undergraduate experience at Lafayette was because the director of engineering reached out to me, and we had a conversation about what my experience would be like going to an engineering program at a liberal arts school.
Yeah, and those, I think those experiences can be really meaningful. I would also say that, as a student, be strategic about the way that you're reaching out and how frequently you're doing it. I mean, I'm sort of, I'm getting the picture of the person in the ice cream shop who asked to taste every single flavor and
Right.
maybe a second try, and it's like,
Yeah.
look, come on, man, like you really don't want to get that cone. Like, what are you doing? So, try and narrow things down a little bit. Do you want maybe mint chocolate chip or cookie dough? And so you're going to taste those two things. I think that same kind of thing here. We want to have a smaller number of schools to choose from. So you don't need to reach out to the admission office at every single school you've gotten into.
No.
Just think about what are your top 2 or 3 choices. What's it going to come down to? And Joy, you and I are not experts on the college finance side of the picture, but we will be talking in the third segment about financial fit as it pertains to juniors who are researching colleges. I just want to say we'll also touch a little bit on financial fit as it pertains to seniors right now. So stick around for that final segment, and we'll come back to that finance piece, because I know that that's a huge part of this, especially given the current state of affairs for families to think about.
Definitely.
I want to sort of jump into a little bit of the nuts and bolts around other option. We've got the wait list as the sort of thing that's hanging over a lot of students in some cases. It can often be the case that you've been waitlisted at a school that was your first choice, or maybe it's a school you really want to strongly consider. When does the sort of wait list come into the process, and what role does a waitlisted college play in the kind of research that you are discussing right now? Do I want to research it at the same level of intensity and interest as I do for the schools where I've gotten in, or does it take a backseat to those schools?
Mm-hmm. A lot of students do think about the wait list. The wait list doesn't come into play for the most part until after students have to deposit, until after they make that final decision.
Right.
So yes, you might have that school in the back of your mind to say, that was my first choice and I'm on the waiting list. But that school honestly is not an option for you right now because you haven't been admitted. So what's most important is to focus on the schools where you have received offers of admission and narrow those down to those 2 or 3 schools that you're going to do that research or reach out to the colleges or talk to current students to get a sense.
Yeah.
Because you need to make a decision for the most part by May 1. That's when students decide of where they're going to go. The waitlist is used for colleges after they know what the size of their incoming class is. And they won't know that until all of those deposits are in and counted after May 1. So it's most important is that you make a decision from an offer that you have, because
That's
you
right.
want to be able to go somewhere in the fall.
Yeah.
So the way the waitlist comes into play is colleges use it strategically to fill the needs of the incoming freshman class. So if they're looking to balance it out for geographic diversity, maybe they say, oh, we'd really like to pull some more kids in from the West Coast if it's an East Coast school. So kids that are on the West Coast, they're going to be the focus of the wait list in terms of who are they looking for. Wait
Yeah.
lists are not ranked. It's not first come, first serve. If they're looking to balance out the male to female ratio, and they need more men. Well, then if you're a guy, you're in the
That's
spotlight.
right. That's right.
So it really depends on the needs of the incoming class from the perspective of the college.
Yeah, I think, when you're in the admission process through the winter and early spring, you're playing sort of a theoretical numbers game where you're saying, okay, if we admit this many students, a certain percentage will accept our offer. And so we're trying to get as close as we can to the target. When we get to the waitlist point in the process, we can actually count who is in our class, who has actually sent an enrollment deposit, and what are we missing? What are some things that we need to add in order to make this class representative of what we're looking for when we set our targets months and months and months ago? So there's no real way to rank the wait list. And what I'm hearing you say is that researching and considering a waitlisted school really needs to be secondary from those options that are front and center. And I think that is a very important takeaway here. Is a lot of students will say, well, I got into school A, school B, and school C, and I'm on the wait list at school D. And they treat it as sort of an equal option there. You don't want to do that. Yeah, you want to really think about it as you've got 3 choices, and you might have to prepare yourself mentally for if that waitlist school comes calling, what are you going to say? Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't be diving in deep research if you're on the waitlist at a particular school.
Yeah, I would say make that decision first of where you're intending to enroll. And then you can consider that wait list school and doing some research just to say you're prepared in case that call comes in or you receive that email with an offer. But that's no way a guarantee.
That's right. What are some of the things that, I don't know that we've ever spoken about this before, but are there under-researched or underutilized factors in making a final college decision that students don't often turn to? I think a lot of students think about, I'm going to look at the major. I might look at certain aspects of location. I might call an admission officer or a college professor. Are there things that students tend not to look at that can actually be meaningful in pointing in a particular direction?
I think they don't trust their guts enough sometimes. Yeah. Like you don't trust your gut. You get to a point, if you can narrow it down to 2 schools that you're really interested in, then I think it's time that you can trust your gut because you've done all of that research. And I think a lot of times students think, well, there has to be one right answer. And if I do enough research and I talk to enough people, then I'll know what it is. I'll get the right answer.
That's right.
But I think trusting yourself and knowing all that you did in this process, because if you think about it, most students have been in this process for about 18 months. You know what's right for you, and trusting your gut, really knowing who you are and where you're going to succeed for yourself. I think that's underutilized or not given enough weight at times once all the research is done. Where are you going to picture yourself when you pack up all your stuff in August and you move in to your dorm room and you make it your home away from home and your parents leave? They give you hugs and kisses and they say good luck. Where are you going to take a deep breath and say, I'm excited?
Right.
And a little bit comes from that gut, I think.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that, we sometimes treat this as though if I get into this school, then I just sort of have to plug myself in and I'm going to get a particular outcome. And that's not how it works at all. It's really a matter of helping to bring you out at your very best. And so the gut is really a powerful factor in making sure that when you start that experience, as you just described, you're invested in being there. You want to be there. And that's why, when people come and ask us, Joy, which school should I choose? That's not something that we can do, even as people that know these colleges really well. I can say, well, I know which school I would choose for me,
Right.
but I'm certainly not going to be able to say, you should go to this college or you should choose this option, because it's very dependent on who that student is. Just like, somebody asking, who should I go to the prom with? That's not really something you want to outsource to another party, right? You want to be the one that's in the position to make that choice. Do you have any other, are there, we got about 30 seconds, another minute. Are there any other smaller things that maybe students can look at? I mean, we sort of in advance talked about AP and IB credit. I don't know if that's something you're thinking about. Anything else that students should be looking at here?
Yeah, I think they can look at how the work that they've done in high school is going to be a benefit in college in terms of your IB or AP exam scores that can be used for credit. That's part of the research that you can do. I also think that you can tap into schools' social media. Look at their Instagram accounts. Look at if they have a Facebook page for admitted students. In those ways that you can get a sense of the culture and the energy of a campus and what's important to them in terms of that fit. Can you see yourself there? But there are things like, if you get a 4 or 5 on an AP, how will that give you credit? Because that's not the same at every school.
That's right.
If you're thinking about how you might get ahead and get some of those core courses or general education requirements out of the way, you'll want to look on, usually it's the registrar site that can give you information about exam results and how they are used for credit.
Yeah, I think some of that pragmatic consideration should come into play at some point. So, that's a nice little piece to investigate, especially if that's an important part of what your decision-making process is going to look like. So, yeah. Joy, thanks a lot for coming on the show today for both our listeners and our viewers. I really enjoyed it. It's always great to see a friendly face here on the show.
Indeed.
So thanks for coming on.
Thanks,
folks,
Ian.
Yeah, you got it. When we come back, we're going to talk about what you can do if you don't actually like any of the college options available to you and you're feeling lukewarm. So if you're struggling to find the path ahead, you won't want to miss the next segment. Don't go away.
All clear.